All right, this is No Excuses with Michael DiLeonardo. I'm your host, RJ Roger. We got special guests joining us again. Anthony Cardinale, a lawyer that represented many different cases, but specifically for the point of this show, John Gotti. Um, Tony, we had a lot of feedback from the show. It's only been out 2 days. It's approaching 20,000 views already, so it's coming along well. Thank you for being here with us. Michael, you can make an introduction and swing it over to Tony.
Yeah, actually, he was Frankie Lowe's lawyer, and like you could consider him the lead counsel there. I know there was a question in the comment section that he wasn't lead counsel, but if he wasn't lead, the other guy was standing in the background. Krieger, he was dead in the water.
Yeah, that's another story for another time. John was not happy from like the third day on. He was not happy.
Yeah, I used to hear that. I see Jackie every day. Jackie would tell me about everything, all the goings on the trial and what was going on behind the scenes. Sure.
Yeah. What's funny, speaking of the trial, you know who I saw when I was scrolling through some of your prior feeds is Frankie DeChico.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him, and he's still alive. God love him. Still alive?
No, Frank. No, you don't mean Frankie DeChico. You mean
Butterex.
Oh, Joe DeChico.
Joey, yeah, Frankie DeChico. I'm sorry, I got him. Yeah.
He's
still alive?
No, he passed away. He was in jail. He was in prison. Yeah, good man. They should have let him out. This guy shouldn't have died. He was a great guy.
He was a good guy.
I'll tell you a funny story. I think this was the pinch, or was the one before that. He had a lot of little arrests. Joe, he used to do 2 years, 3 years, and then come on. The FBI went to his house one day, and George Gabriel was usually the Gambino squad lead, right? And other agents showed up without Gabriel, pinching him. And he goes, "You just can't arrest me. Where's Gabriel?" That was funny. What we got?
So Tony, I'm going to start with you, and I want to just ask you a couple things. So first thing I wanted to ask you was, after I edited the show, put the show out, you called me and you said, RJ, there's one part that I just had something a little off on. So I said, Tony, I'm not going back cutting the whole thing out. We'll bring you on live. Can you correct that for me on that?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity, because afterwards, after we were speaking, I thought a little bit about it and I got my dates mixed up. The problem that Lee Bailey was having with the client in the federal court in the Northern District of Florida, up in Pensacola, was 4 or 5 years later. It was after the OJ case, or during the time period that case was going on. He was representing this guy. So that wasn't an issue in 92. But looking back at all that, just so we get the record completely straight, and nobody accuses us, oh, wait a minute, here's the log, he went in there, he actually was there, Bailey. I had a chance to talk to somebody who knows everything about what happened with this meeting. And in fact, the person that set up the meeting for Bailey to go in and interview to be John's replacement lawyer in the place of Cutler. So the guy, believe it or not, that wanted Bailey to fill in that role was young John. Young John was the guy that came up with the name and wanted to bring him in as one of the lawyers to meet with his dad before he picked, a new lawyer. And so John Jr. set up that meeting, and it did take place. He brought him to the MCC, waited for him to come out, and then talked to him an hour or two after the meeting. Very short meeting, first of all. It did happen. He did go there. But one thing is very clear from the horse's mouth, if you will, is that Bailey wanted the case more than he wanted oxygen. He didn't turn anything down. He was surprised, frankly, when John Jr. told him, look, we're sorry, they're going to go in a different direction. But that happened within an hour or so after he left. John Sr. had the ability to make phone calls pretty easily from inside MCC. And shortly after that meeting, John Sr. and John Jr. had a conversation, and John Sr. told John Jr., who told me that John didn't want to hire him, didn't like him, didn't want him. Just tell him, please, we're sorry, we're going in a different direction. But Bailey came out of that meeting thinking he was really in the driver's seat, and that he would get on the case, and he was really pitching the case, really wanted the case. So to the extent that makes a little bit clearer, again, the last time we spoke, I doubted that a meeting actually took place. Now I want to set the record straight. Yeah, a meeting did take place, but not the meeting that Gravano's reporting, and certainly not if there is a tape and everybody says, oh yeah, there's a tape where Bailey says I turned the case down when I knew he was going to throw Sammy and Frankie under the bus. I got to see that to believe it. And again, I don't want to call the guy a liar, but his version or revision of history that he turned the case down, that's not accurate. That's all I want to say.
Well, we're glad you cleared that up. I'm sure you did your due diligence here and create the record straight, and it makes you a better investigator maybe than remembering something.
Whatever I say, I'm doing my very best to make it the absolute truth as I know it, and from the best of my memory. Now, I haven't gone back and reviewed anything. Remember, we're talking. I can't believe it's been that long, Mikey. It's been 31 years. Holy moly! It's just when you think about it, it's crazy. But I still remember. Believe me, that was a very memorable event in my life, that trial. And to get to your point about who was in the courtroom, just so that again all of the viewers that weren't around, they might have been alive in 31 years ago. So here's the point. As you pointed out, I was brought in to replace a lawyer that was disqualified for Frank LoCascio, and I became his counsel, and my co-counsel was John Mitchell, and counsel for John was Al Krieger, and Krieger had two of his associates, either both there or one at a time with him as his backup. But I gave an opening statement, I gave a closing statement, I questioned every witness. It wasn't like I was sitting there as part of some backbench team member, bringing the towels in when they needed a water boy or something. No, I was on my feet every day of that trial, and both John and Frank relied on me, because very early in the case, and again, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but Al Krieger and John had a falling out. I mean, a very big falling out. And as far as I'm concerned, the whole thing is private. But from that point on, believe me, I wasn't a potted plant in that courtroom. I was up throwing punches every day. And I know if you talk to a very good friend of my family, Jackie knows, you would know, he would have told you, what was going on in there.
He did.
Yeah.
Every day. I said every day. Wasn't a day I missed. Especially coming from when they were on trial. It wasn't a day we were being together. We had sent over Mickey Rourke on the course of that trial. Tori got Al Lewis.
Anthony Quinn.
Yes.
Jay Black.
And the infamous one, the most bizarre one, was the kid that was the fighter.
Mickey Rourke.
No. There was a real fighter, a professional heavyweight fighter from Queens I'm having like a mental block. It'll come to me, but he was there, and one of the jurors sends a note to the judge saying, the guy he's there, he's intimidating me. And frankly, the guy was just sitting there. Again, we all had seats, and there would be a rotation of that seat, that one seat. There would be Mickey Rourke, Anthony Quinn, Grandpa, Lewis. But this was a fighter.
John Amos.
His name will come to me, but he was just sitting there, literally just sitting there. And this one juror sends a note in saying, that guy's intimidating me. Next thing you know, we got a big hearing going on. And the judge is like, did you bring him in to intimidate this jury? Because we had a few black people on the jury. I don't know what was going on. The guy was just there because he happened to be friends with a lot of these people. Oh gosh, his name will come to me before we're done. But it was a circus inside that courtroom. A lot of people, there's a lot of revisions going on out there. Particularly, I had to only because I wanted to see what that puke had to say. Gleason wrote a book recently, his version of the trial, and everybody's entitled. The winners make the history, right? They write the history, but his history's way off in terms of a bunch of things. Not the least of which you would expect in that book, like we talked about the last time. It's Sammy's reason that he turned is because John was going to toss him under the bus or whatever. Gleason would have known that. It's not in his book. Nothing like that in his book. It's just again, there's no backup for that. I mean, I think we might have. I don't want to keep beating that dead horse, but I just hope people understand that Sammy, when he says that John would do something to hurt him in order to help himself, it's just a flat out lie. And I don't want people to get confused about John. And I know I made a statement and I stand by it that if someone had come to John and said, look, if you take the fall and you go to jail for the rest of your life and marry him, and everything that's going to happen to you is going to happen to you, if you could foresee that future, as bad and horrible as it was, he would have done that to save them. John Gotti would have, if somebody had said to him, look, all you got to do is take a plea, these guys survive. He would have done that. If that's, and again, there's a little bit of a friction here. On one hand, John was the kind of guy who we know would admit anything, anytime, anywhere. There's a famous tape where, John Jr. is talking to him in jail about something that happened with his son-in-law, and basically I was representing Carmine, his Agnello, in a grand jury beat, and at the end of it, we basically walked the government into a trap, and he walked out of the grand jury, no contempt, no perjury charges.
Yeah, I know that.
Nothing.
It's a good story to tell. We could tell on another show when you do all your.
But John was the kind of guy who said, if you caught me, I was charged with robbing a church, and when the cops got me, I had the steeple sticking out of my ass. I still wouldn't admit it. I still wouldn't admit it. But now let me say that. That said, if anybody had ever told John Gotti, look, Sammy and Frankie can go home or only do a little bit of time, but you gotta plead guilty. Now he would have said, I won't admit a lot of things, but I'll admit whatever I got to admit to help those guys. That's just the way he was. That's the nature of the man.
Hey Anthony, what was the guy you were thinking of? Was it Vito?
The fighter? Vito Fermo you're thinking of. No.
That wasn't who you were talking about?
His name will come to me. But he was a heavyweight, a big kid, but he was just sitting there. He wasn't doing anything, he wasn't making any faces, he wasn't doing anything, but the judge is like, get him out of here. He's here, and we're like, what? And we had to ask God to leave.
Yeah. Tony, I just got to give a shout out to you from John DeGrandis. I know you know him from New England, the Boston area. He wants to say hello. He's a big fan of yours. Even before you even came on the channel, he talked about you a lot. Sent us a picture of you all together at a boxing forum before a match. So
I got his brother Joey. I got his brother Joey a title shot. And if somebody would have told you, oh, you can get a title shot, they would have said, nah. But I did. I was able to help him out. He's a good fighter. Johnny's brother Joey was tough as nails. Quick story. One time, John Jr. John Jr.'s in my office in Boston, and Joey walks in. And I introduce them, and I say, look, you know, this is Joey DeGrandis, and Joey's very gracious and pleased to meet John. And I start saying he's a good boxer. I got him rated, da-da-da. And I said, he's got a great left hook. If he hits you with it, you're in trouble. He says, he hits me with it, he's in trouble.
I just, RJ, before we go on, I just want to acknowledge somebody who's a loyal supporter of our site. Somebody has an interest in everything Gravano. Joy Faraci. I hope you don't mind, Joy. I never talked to you. We never had communication. But everybody on here feels your pain. Gravano, Emilito killed her brother, 16-year-old boy. She feels the pain till today. She don't let go. She's not supposed to let go. And she has pain in her heart. I want everybody to say a prayer for her and her brother, if you can. And like I said, she's out here defending her brother's life, reputation, and the story that happened that has many facets to it, one of which he ran towards Gravano, who had a shotgun pointed at him, and he was murdered. So maybe one day we could get into the real story of that, get some records, some police records and autopsy reports and stuff like that. And
frankly, what I'm hoping is that, and I've talked to them before, and that is, you know, the daughters of Louis Milito and Garofalo. You know, they went through a lot based on what Sammy did, and what they can't believe is here's this guy out here making money and telling stories about how he killed, you know, their dads. That shouldn't be appropriate. Like, nobody should be able to make money by bragging about things that you do like he did. That doesn't make any sense. Now, I've never watched him. I never will watch him. I won't even read reports of what he does. But I know from talking to them the kinds of things he says, and it's literally almost bragging about killing, you know, their fathers. You know, and I hope they come up with some way to you know, put a stop to it. I know that in New York, for example, there's the Son of Sam law. You can't make money based on crimes that you've committed. The problem is, I don't know where he is. If he's not in New York, whether they could bring a case against him in New York, I don't know. I don't do civil work, so I was not the guy for them to talk to. But you know, I remain available to them, whatever they need. If ever they need my assistance, I'm available.
Thanks, Michael. That was
for everybody. You want to ask your questions first? You want to open up to the board? What do you say?
Yeah, so I got a couple of things I'll run. Guys, I pulled off all the questions that everybody left under the video in the comments section. Any questions that were sent on Patreon, everything on YouTube, and I got everything that was left in the live chat. There's no way to get to all of them, but I got so we'll try to give you short, quick, concise answers so we can get through as many as we can. And then we'll answer as many as we can. The one where I want to start off at, and I'll pitch this one to you, Anthony. One of the common things that I saw was the questions about the Castellano murder that you brought up. And I've seen a lot of questions come in at that. So I'm just going to ask you one to answer for everybody. So the funny thing is, and I never thought about this, and Michael and I discussed this off air after the show also. I'm writing a book that's coming out to a major publisher. Even the way I tell the story on Castellano hit is the same way it came from Sammy. Every movie, every book, everything on YouTube is, as far as how Paul was killed, came from Sammy. Yeah. I never even questioned that until you brought it up. So I know we talked a little bit before we started the show about this same thing, and I wanted to pitch that back to you. So how would you answer to the Castellano head, some of the claims that you made in the show, the first show?
Well, first of all, you got to understand this is in my mindset, and I think if I'm given a chance, I could convince anybody that had an open mind of this, and that is Sammy turned because he knew how bad the tapes were. It had nothing to do with John. It had nothing to do with being thrown under a bus or he was going to be made the scapegoat, etc. It had to do with the fact that he knew that he was going to lose the case and spend the rest of his life in jail. So what he did was he came up with what was the only card he could play. And that card was the Castellano murder, because they had no witnesses. There's no tapes. There was one eyewitness that we talked about last week. That was, that's all there was. And he didn't see any Lincoln Continental come driving by after the shooting or anything. And frankly, he didn't see anything, but that's another story. Sammy knew, though, that he could get the keys to that jail cell by coming up with a story that was plausible. That he knew what the facts were. I mean, they were all laid out in the discovery about where, when, etc., and what people, eyewitnesses did see. Although no one was an eyewitness to anybody except this one character from California and Oregon who shows up and says, "I ran towards the bullets when I heard the shooting. I went that way," and he supposedly recognized Tony Roach. And of course, that leads into Sammy was smart enough to say, "Okay, I got all these little pieces. Now, how do I put myself in it so that I can tell this story, a story that the government would have moved mountains to get, would have paid any price to get, because that was the real sex appeal. None of the other stuff was that big a deal. That was a big deal. The Castellano Bellotti murder was the crowning point of their case. And Sammy realized, this is how I can get out of here. I'll come up with a story that I can say I was there when it happened. I was driving John. We were sitting in a car. He's driving. John's in the passenger, supposedly. And I believe he said he were in a Lincoln or something. They're in the corner of 46th and 3rd Avenue. But they're on the west side of that corner in the turn lane where you make a left to go on 46th Street goes east. So to go north, you make a left. And 3rd Avenue goes north one way towards uptown. So he says we're parked right there right at the corner on the opposite side of 46th Street from Sparks, on the opposite side of 3rd Avenue from Sparks, in a turn lane at 5:30 in the afternoon, Christmas time. And that's where buses turn. That's where that was the first turn lane. He says that we stopped there for, I don't know, half hour or so, while we waited to see, and we saw the whole thing go down. And then I drove John. And of course, he says I met pre-planning at Joe Watts's house. I had him describe Joe Watts's house because that's one of the reasons Bailey was there during the course of it, because they knew Gravano was telling the story now that was not out there before. I mean, before November, in December, nobody knew that Gravano was going to do what he did, nor did they know he was going to talk about the Castellano murder. So I was given a number of questions by Lee Bailey to ask about this story that he's telling, including describing where in Joe Watts' house this had taken place, what did it look like, and all that. And every answer he gave was wrong. I mean, that would have helped.
No, hold on. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. Now, you said, who gave you those questions?
Joe Watson, Lee Bailey.
F. Lee Bailey.
F. Lee Bailey. So asked me when I was cross-examining Gravano, could you please ask these questions? And they all had to do with things related to Joe Watts, who was supposedly part of that group that planned, carried out. And the questions I asked him, Joe Watson and Lee Bailey were very pleased with, because everything he said about who was there, when it happened, what the room was like, what was in the room, etc., was all wrong. And but the key thing though is just use your common sense. There's no way you can park a car there that long without it getting bulldozed out of the way. I mean, it's just that simple. And why on earth, how stupid would one guy be the guy who's supposed to be the boss of the biggest crime family in New York City, the most powerful guy. Why would he stay on the scene? Why would he be anywhere near there? I mean, that is so far from what common sense tells you that it can't be true. And then when you add in the fact about where he says they watched everything from, and then slowly crossed Third Avenue and drove by so John could look out the window and and be sure that that everything was done. It's a lie.
So what you're saying, he's created this scenario, but you're not saying they didn't kill Paul.
I don't know who killed Paul.
I'll tell you.
He's dead. He's dead. That's all I can tell you. But I'll tell you one thing. You never ever heard out of John's mouth, even when he's on tape, and the tapes are running, and he doesn't know they're running. You ever hear anything out of his mouth about that?
That's funny. You know what's funny about that is the only documented record of John Gotti talking about the Paul hit. He says, "Who knows who kills Paul? Probably the goddamn cops did it," or something like that.
So there's no tape here. You understand? There's nothing at all that they can base this case on. And Sammy shows up. He's the knight in shining armor for them. He's like, oh man, and they look at the deal they made. Look at the deal. If you don't believe that what I'm saying is true, how much they wanted the Castellano murder, and they would have given Sammy anything. Just look what happened. Look at it. But what he did, 5 years in jail. But come on, really, it's insane. It's just insane.
Now, I just want to.
I leave that. Listen, again, if anybody believes that story, then God bless them. I can't look inside your mind and see what's happening, why you would ever believe such bullshit. But good for you if you believe it.
Now, I just want to interject one thing. Joy Faraci is watching the show. She says, "Michael, thank you so much. No words can express what that means to me." She goes on and she says that he slandered my dead brother on his podcast, saying my brother was on drugs, never ever did drugs. I have the facts. Additionally, she says, she's talking to someone, looks like Danny F. My brother was a 16-year-old innocent boy in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't know if you're in Joy, you are. There's a link I don't know if you're in a place, but you're more than welcome to pop onto our show if you would like. I dropped the link in the chat. All you gotta do is hit the link. You don't have to, but if you would like to come on, you are more than welcome to join us on air. There's a link in the chat. Michael, go ahead.
Jay, she don't have to show her face. She could just do voice. And also, if you're not comfortable right now, Joy, we'd be honored if you contact us after the show and share some of your inside thoughts and information you may have about your brother's despicable murder, 16-year-old kid. So you're welcome in our family at any time to share your grievances.
Michael, can I ask you, because I know the answer, but I want to ask this for the sake of the viewership, because again, I read every comment on this video, every single one. And I want to ask you two questions. One, how long have you known Sammy? And how well did you know his friends, that people like Melito and people like that? And I'm asking this because sometimes I think we lose, like the viewer loses sight of that. They just see a show. They don't know the relationships. They're not. That maybe you go back with some of these people. That maybe some of these people were your friends. That maybe you're speaking from a place of personal dealing. And I would ask any single person. There's over 350 people in the chat. I'm not sure how many people are watching, but if any of you guys have known someone your whole entire life, would you feel like you have a little bit more of an inside understanding of that person? Would you feel like you know things that a lot of other people may not know? So, Michael, my question again: how long did you know Sammy, and how well did you know his friends that were victims, people like Melito, etc.? Go ahead.
I have a brother 10 years my senior, and I had a brother that was 9 years my senior, all in Gravano's age group. My brothers were burglars. They were criminals in the streets. It's kids. Gravano hung out with the Rampers, another big gang in the area. My brothers were more from Bath Avenue. And they interacted. They knew each other. My brothers opened up a bar in my basement. They'd go come down to like 25 cents, 50 cents. They would take a shot. It was like a little club. And Gravano would club, come to there, have a couple of drinks, and some other guys. I was a little boy. Don't forget at this time. 8, 9, 10 years old. And that's how I got to first meet Sam. And then growing up in the street, you know, Sammy was a guy that I looked up to. He's one of those guys that was propelled into that life in the street and had garnered a lot of respect. And I interacted with Sam since a young boy, since a young kid. So when Paul opens his club on 86th Street, I already had a couple of social clubs under my belt in the 70s. So, and I was in the street, and we knew each other pretty good. And as we were in the same family now, when he came from the Colombo guys, we gravitated even closer to each other. Now, Louis Melito, who's the one that gets Sammy Gravano pulled over to our family through Johnny Rizzo, who was with Tato. Tato was the skipper. Louis and Sammy were really, really close. And he's the one that gets him pulled over. And Louis and I got very, very close. We had a murder together with Sammy. I was a participant in that murder. And, we bonded. I had my social club on Utrecht Avenue. Sammy would come there with his whole crew. And if he didn't come with them, they came along. Melito, Stymie, the Bat, Nicky Cowboy was over there. He liked to drink a little bit. And everybody else, Huck. And so many other guys he mentions on this show. We were very close, the whole group, very close. His in-laws, I played in that house when I was 12 years old in his in-laws' house. His brother and I were friends. His brother-in-law, excuse me. We were friends. And he went his way. Later on in life, he had his own lifestyle that changed. And so, this notion that, I really had no relationship with Sam. I knew him very, very well. He knew me very, very well. He helped push me when my name went around on that list to get straightened out every time. So I went up to his farm. I hate sitting there giving a resume of my relationship with this guy, or anybody. It's like embarrassing because it's well established. Everybody knows outside the YouTube world my relationship with Sam. So, and I've seen the changes in this man through the years. And at that time, you can't mention those changes, or you wound up being number 20 or 21 or 23, whatever number would have came. So, you got to keep your mouth shut. This stuff I know. Think I can say it? Then? No. Because his word counted. And as we all know, when he gets somebody's ear, he knows how to use it to his advantage and at the cost of people's lives for whatever reasons. He has a great track record of trying to make excuses for every murder and every deed he has done. That's the problem here. Yeah. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. I didn't explain fully. I'll get there one day. I'm smiling, but I'm really not. It's something that it's a personal thing for me. It became personal. The more and more he talks about people in a bad light, like Joy Faraci on here. I didn't know her brother. I knew nothing about the whole circumstance. But if she says her brother was not a drug addict, if he's standing on the corner, he was a drug addict, so what? We know a lot of drug addicts, don't we, in our families? Yeah. What does that mean? He deserves to die? So he came at me and tried to downplay me, minimize me. That's okay. I don't need a big ego. I'm here for a reason. And my reason is not to be a revisionist in history, is to tell history and put everything in back of my neighborhood, back in place. My neighborhood knows this guy. If you go to Bensonhurst, they'll tell you about Gravano. They couldn't tell you about him then, like I just said. but they'll tell you about him now because he ratted. Like me. One rat's ain't better than the next rat. But I can't just let him get away with hurting all these family members anymore. I just can't do it. I had these talks with him. So, axe to grind, whatever, I'm attack channel, whatever it is. I'm just trying to tell history. I'm just trying to put it back in its place. That's all. If you want to criticize me for it or give me accolades for it, I'll take both. I'm on the receiving end and the giving end. Don't forget, I got this guy with me. He's my protection. But he can't get on a plane. I just want to explain something. I can't take this guy. He can't get on a plane. The metal detector won't let him on. So for me to go to Arizona, I can't take him with me.
Michael, I want to ask you just one. Are you getting feedback?
No.
Okay. So I want to ask just one follow-up question. Because a lot of the questioning is, if you'll hear from people, well, it's the mafia. They're all gangsters. They're all alike. They're all killers. Everybody, what do you expect in that life? So I know around about what your answer is. Let me ask you this. Can you explain what makes a Sammy Gravano, in your mind, a Sammy Gravano different than someone like a John Gotti in your assessment?
Well, look, we're all criminals. There's no question. You know, if we're asked to take a life, our part of our oath is to take somebody's life, even a stranger. Somebody did nothing to you. Sure, this is not a justification. This is not moralizing our life. It's just that when you join that part of life, it's like joining an army or a cop or whatever you kid at Kiwanis Club. They have a set of rules. And you understand these rules going in. Now, when you're in that life, right? It's how you use that. Are you going to be the guy, a gas pipe, a Mikie Scarfo, a Scarpa, a Gravano? How do you want to use this and how far you want to go in that life? A Lucky Luciano. We could go through the history time. I'm not going to give a history lesson over here. But everybody's different. There's a lot of good people in that life that took the same oath, that did not do with these certain names that they make movies about today. Now, there's a conscience to be had. Gravano admits no feelings. That's not my words. He's on videotape many times saying it. No remorse, no sympathy, no empathy, zero. Now, if you have that in that life and you have that power to take life, what do you become when you creep up and creep up and creep up, when you have ultimate say, and then you have the boss's ear? Now you got other guys that don't take advantage of that, and they last forever in that life. I mean, most guys don't even go to jail, let's say. They're scared because they ain't looking for that. They don't have that, I need to kill or I need to scheme to, or undermine my brothers. I give you quotation marks on brothers, right? Kill each other's brothers. So the difference between him and John was murderer. There's no question. I'm not going to say he wasn't. Did John kill arrange killing Paul Castellano and Tommy Bellotti? You bet your ass. But look at the different people. John did not. He started almost a war. He killed the commission boss to protect his friends. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm going to have a whole view on that down the road. I'm just telling you what he did. You may need to compare two human beings here, or maybe one human being, of how they acted in that life. John didn't kill his friends. Sammy killed his friends. They were co-equal my friends.
You know, the difference, I think, if I could, my 2 cents between the two people, and you can hear it in the tapes and you know, in many instances where John wasn't there to make money. He made money, don't get me wrong. You're not there to give money. I hear that. But the idea of him like finagling into a business, I mean, sure, he'd like to get money from a business. No, who wouldn't? You know, somebody saying, here, you know, here's a package every week, every month, whatever it is. But Sammy had only one thing in mind: how much money can I get? And now once he gets this power, this is how I get it. I know how to get it. And the only way to get it is to lie and create situations where he kills innocent people, guys with families and guys he knew his whole life. That just wasn't, John would never do that to take over somebody's business, and he wasn't a businessman, he was a street guy. He just wasn't. I mean, one of the things that, he would say, he's not a butcher, he doesn't have a company, he doesn't own 10 Stop and Shops. He doesn't own, other guys have big businesses, I don't care who it is, better certainly than I.
You touched on something right there, Tony. You open up another. I think I talked about this one. John didn't need to kill anybody to take their business. I'm talking about everybody in the family that was being killed. You know why? RJ, do you know why? He was the boss. Every business belonged to him. Tell anybody to take it. We go back to Louis DeBona. He had a skipper, Patsy Conti. He didn't need to kill Louis DeBona to control him. Yeah, Patsy Conti, bring me money. He didn't need Gravano to go tell him, bring me money, and to kill Louis. That was personal, as we articulated.
I killed him because he didn't want DeBona to get any of the money. He wanted 100% of the money, and whatever he kicked. But he didn't want a partner.
No, it wasn't even a matter of a partner. He was in administration. This was This was revenge, pure revenge on Gravano's part. He could have took an end of what he was. Yeah, he took his business. He controlled the sheetrock companies. But this was more revenge. You can't step on Gravano's toe. He's never going to forget it. Till today, he's the same way. Now, that's all he had to do was go to Patsy County, tell Louis stop bringing in X amount a month. We don't care. I know how many jobs he's got. Right. If he don't kill him, you don't have to go there and be partners with him again. You don't have to. Why you John owned every street business there was. The family owns the unions, not the person that's the president of the union. The family owns it. They are caretakers. Every business that had to do anything with the family, Gravano was a delegated custodian, like Frank DeChico, like DB, like John Gotti, like Bobby Sasso, and that I could just name 1,000 names of everybody who was a caretaker. Like, John Gotti, you know what he was? He was caretaker for an enterprise that before him, there was a boss, a caretaker, and after him, there's a boss as a caretaker. He's the representant, a representative of the family. The family owns everything. So he didn't need to kill somebody to take it. I guess I went long-winded, but I'm trying to be as exact and precise as possible to let people understand that you don't need to kill to control a business in our family. It was well established. Gravano killed because he liked it. He killed DeBono because he had that beef years ago, and this was revenge. He had the club. That's it. That's my opinion.
But he also, in addition to that, he wound up personally doing better. It wasn't just because okay, all the same money. I'm not going to get anything out of this. These guys were I'm talking about whether it's Louis or any of those guys. He wound up with more than being a caretaker. He wound up taking a piece of whatever they had, whatever action they had was now his. So there's that.
He became the direct custodian to Local 282. Exactly. I was liaison. I was one of the liaisons appointed by Sam Gravano. It's in the 302, not my words, his.
Yeah.
So, you didn't have to kill these guys to control it. There was something wrong with this guy. He felt he had to kill everybody. It's not a joke. I mean, I'm laughing again. It's just.
I mean, listen. As much as I agree, and that's the part I talk about when I say he's literally the devil. Only he's in front of us here. There's definitely that part of him. He's got that psychotic aspect that when somebody has absolutely no empathy, they couldn't care less how many people they killed. That's not, obviously it's not normal. But don't ever forget the other reason. That is, he put more money in his own pocket. In personal family's pocket, in his close associates' pockets. That was a driving force there.
Well, that was John's credit.
You're right about John. It wouldn't matter to John. The number's the number. But how much of that number Sammy wound up with after he went and made a case to do something to somebody? That's to me, you can't disassociate those two things. A psychotic and and a guy who money is his real guy. That that was his only honor was money. He had no other honor.
That was John's beef on the tape. It was family money that I don't want to say that Sammy robbed everything. I'm not saying that at all. Sammy was the custodian of a lot of these companies and unions that we control. He turned that money in. That was already well established. He turned that money in. The problem John has with those tapes is, like you just said, Tony, the businesses he took, he made them his personal businesses.
Right.
I opened a huge company in Staten Island. It's not this big. We wound up, of course, who and what I was and who let me go into the construction business, right? John, and then his son allowed me to do that. We exploded. We became a huge company. My thing was I had to give what I had to give to the family. It was my business, mine and Eddie Garofalo's business. But it wasn't my business. I got permission. I was a representative of our family to do that, and I was a vehicle to bring money into the family. Because I opened up Metropolitan Stone doesn't mean I put everything in my kick. That's wrong, and that's what Gravano did. That was his mistake, and that's what John was mad at. I couldn't be me without them. Simple as that.
No, I understand. But I don't want to separate the two things. The fact is that there was a motive besides his psychosis, and lack of empathy and lack of feeling, and that was money and survival. I mean, he wanted to keep making money. He wanted to stay on the street. If you want any proof of that, what did he do when he got out to Arizona? He opened a big drug business, put his son in the business. He's the guy that supposedly says, "I don't want my son." That was a big mistake John made. When he proposed his son, I would never do. Yeah, no, you wouldn't do that. But you put your kid in there selling death, to strangers, to kids on the street. That's okay for your son to sell death. Go ahead. It just.
You know what? And his son, I know his son since he's born. Gerard, he's a real good kid. Man, now he's got family, but he's a real good kid. He really is. A victim. Our children are victims of us and what we put them through, what we allow them to do. So I feel Gerard's on the right path. I think he made a huge mistake at the time, and like I said, I like his family very, very much. I'm very close to them, and I know Gerard. He's a good guy, and he made a mistake, and he paid for it. He did 9 years, and again, the example is your dad, your mom, and your dad. The people you look up to in life, and it was a monumental mistake, and the kid paid for it by doing time. But whose fault is it? Like you said, it goes back to the guardian, to the person that you emulate, you look at, you look up to. So, it's easy to sit on that up on high, right? When you think you're up high and shoot down arrows at everybody, right? Especially when you got a lot of garbage sitting in your tower, in your turret. Well, RJ, what else you got?
Okay. This question is for Tony. If he can speak on it, what did John and Frankie say about Sammy? Were they heartbroken? Did they see it coming? Were they surprised? Was it? Yes. So essentially, when John found this out, what was his reaction? What was Frankie's reaction? Were they shocked, surprised, XYZ?
Well, the thing is, I'm a little bit at a disadvantage because I wasn't there the moment it happened, but I got there pretty soon thereafter. He leaves mid-November. It becomes by late November, or they knew as soon as he wasn't there, this guy's gone the other way. So when I got in the case in January, obviously, this was already something that had happened. But to say they were shocked, yeah, they were shocked. They couldn't believe it. You know, it was like the furthest thing, you know, that anyone would ever thought he would do up until that moment. Although again, all the warning signs were there, and you know, John clearly understood after the fact that look, I saw this, I should have seen this coming. This is who I've dealt with, and unfortunately, you know, he's in a position to do all this harm. And so yeah, they weren't pleased. Let's put it that way. And you know, John, you know, obviously, you know, had you know, whatever love or whatever connection they had was broken then, and they you know, they certainly hated the sight of him, and they wanted, you know, they you know, would hope that you know, where all the you know, all the harm that could come to him would come to him, like a lightning bolt hit him or something like that. I'm sure that even from the grave they feel that way. But yeah, it's just like any normal person would be. They, of course, they were shocked. A, B, were they disappointed? Yeah. Were they angered? Yeah. All of those things that just any normal person facing that would face.
Someone asked a question that I never thought about, but the stuff that came publicly, that was the tapes and everything, is that all that there was, or was there tapes? Was Gravano caught on tapes at all, or anything like that that you know
get, you know, anything that they intended to use, or frankly anything they had where any defendant was the subject of electronic surveillance, they'd have to turn over.
Okay.
So whether they could use it or not is a different story. There probably was, you know, I don't know how many hundreds of hours of tapes. Ultimately, you put it all together, and you cut out the pieces that you want. The rest, you know, you're not going to use. But were there other tapes with him? Yeah, I'm sure there were, but they weren't. They were certainly not pertinent enough for the government to play them, or you know, we weren't going to play anything.
Michael, what was John Gotti's favorite movie or TV show?
Oh. Well, he would quote Johnny Dangerously at times with Michael Keaton.
One thing, I tell you what, he read more books. He read a lot of books. You know, he wasn't a TV guy. When he was in Marion, they used to his point too. He's in a room that's 8 foot by 6 feet. He's got a little 7, 8 inch black and white television that everybody had in their rooms. And his view was, and he's right, that that was put in there to basically make the inmates become like vegetables. They would just watch TV, you know, all day, all night, and they watch, you know, and it was their way of you know, keeping everybody from, you know, a lot of thought and just you know, putting people into you know, trying to figure the right way to describe it is you know, like in a daze, you know, because they're watching daytime television all day, and that's it. The only thing he ever put that TV on was for ball games. If there was a ball game on, a baseball game or a football game or a basketball game, yes. Other than that, he was a voracious reader. We didn't talk about movies because, you know, we never had a chance to do that, but we talked a lot about books. And I would send him books, and he would recommend books to me. You know, he was fascinated. But the other thing is, if we're going to get to know the guy a little better through this, he hated novels. He didn't like novels. Crime novels, like that was like, don't send me. You know, I don't know, people he would send him books, and he would just give them away because you know, he didn't read that, but he read history, all nonfiction, history books, you know, logic, philosophy, you know, things like that. He did not, you know, read dime novels or you know, whatever the latest, you know, crime caper, spy novels and all that. Didn't do that.
Oh, Jay, what else you got there?
Let's see. There's so many. Let's see here. Michael. Hang on a second. Maybe Mikey. Do you feel he revealed everything? Is it funny that? Let's see. A lot of redundant questions. I don't want to Trying to get some other stuff. Michael, did it bother you that Gotti was killed as? Did it bother you that Paul Castellano was killed without permission? That was the whole purpose of the commission, was to stop that type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to do something on that. Maybe we'll do it soon. Yeah, sure. It was a matter of protocol and should never have been done. I'll leave it at that right now. Then I'll give my opinions in a show we'll do down the road.
Michael, Sammy's really listening to you guys. LOL, his whole setup is changed. No Donna social media or Joe Pesci or Joe Pesci picture.
Oh, he's changed a lot. He listens, though. He definitely listens. I told him I was going to say, yeah. You don't sit in hell no more, right? You don't have Pesci shooting him. You don't have Vito Corleone, a fake guy up there. No, he listens. As a matter of fact, I heard he was looking for some money. He was doing. He's broke. I got a big one. That's serious. Why you?
Thin cup. Yeah, it's a giant thin cup.
He was broke.
Hanging around his neck. He should hang around his neck.
Big enough, no?
And I'll tell you what, he fill up every time he lies. If he got $100 in there, he'd be back in the day. He'd be rolling good, like having the boys in the club line up all the money with the, all the faces on the bills had to go a certain way. You know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Michael,
he'd be back in those days with the stacks.
Please him.
What's that?
Good, Jay. What else you got?
You gotta explain this thing behind you. That's beautiful.
What thing?
This picture behind you.
Oh, you just noticed it now.
No, I noticed it. I was going to ask you towards the end of the show, but we'll get ready and wrap up the show here. So I wanted to ask you about that. I'm sorry?
You noticed it right from the beginning.
I noticed it. Before I even went live, I noticed it. It's beautiful. Where's mine? Why'd you send me one in the mail?
Because this is a hand-painted personal gift for me by a very, very dear friend of mine. He's been working on it a while. I knew nothing about it. Came to visit me, and he gave me this tremendous gift.
Wow.
Where was your family from in Sicily, Mikey? What town?
Buzzarchino, it's province of Palermo, and then Messina. My grandmother's from Messina.
Mine was Agrigento, Vicino de Sciacca, about 20, 30 miles north of Sciacca.
Yeah, the long history of the mob in Sciacca and that Agrigento. Yeah, big time.
Hey, Tony, of what you saw so far, I know you didn't see them all, but from what you saw, we did 9 or 10 hours of Michael analyzing the Ravenite tapes, breaking them down. This is some of what contributed to Sammy becoming upset with Michael, as to how Michael was breaking these down. What are your thoughts on the Gotti tapes analysis that Michael did?
Well, here I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe it. It's a huge problem for Sammy because he would be under the belief that I could say whatever I want about what's being said there, and if it helps me, I'll just make it up, and no one will know the difference about this. Or he could say, yeah, when John said this, he was just covering for something he actually did not, and he's putting the blame on me, kind of bullshit. His problem is that Mikey knows exactly what was being said, why it was being said, how it was being said, what was going on in the streets at the time. And while I haven't listened to all of it, I've started to listen to it. I listened to all the other little clips before we started, and there's no question that Mikey's version of what's being said or why it's being said, particularly, and the reasons behind why it's being said and when it's being said, is spot on. There's there's not like he ain't making this up, And you couldn't do that if you did not have that kind of background. If you didn't understand the parties that were in the middle of the conversation.
Well, it was a good show. We're reaching our time limit here. A lot of good information came out of this show. We answered there was a lot of redundant questions. So if you didn't get your question answered, it's because it was kind of rolled into other discussions that we were having here. leave comments, leave feedback. We appreciate everybody being here. It was a good show. A lot of information
I'll
shared.
tell you one quick story about Phil Leonetti.
Go ahead.
Phil Leonetti once brought his uncle sent some ties to John after the first trial. Scarpa, what was his name?
The ties, hand paint the ties.
Yeah, and they were, first of all, they were green, and John, that was like his least favorite color. He would never even think about it. And in one of the ties, he said something like, he told me, he says, I told this kid, do me a favor, bring this back to that guy, your uncle, and tell him to buy another one and throw them both away. Buy another one just like it, and then throw them both away.
Tony, thank you. This was a lot of people participated in the show. We got almost 500 people just in the live chat. I'm not sure how many total viewers there were yet, but it was a pretty engaging show. You shared a lot of information, answered a lot of questions. Again, Joy Faraci said she's not going to join the show this time, but she will be in touch with us. So thank you, Joy, for being here and for listening. So that's all we got for the show today. We appreciate you all being here. Tony, man, you really put a lot of color out there for people to chew on. A lot of meat for people to chew on. You add a lot of color to the canvas here, so we appreciate you being here. I'll pitch it to you, Michael.
You know, John Gotti died in jail for killing the boss. You know, and I stated earlier that John did kill Paul Castellano and Tommy Bilotti. He engineered it. He wasn't there. He wasn't the shooter. But I couldn't take that away from John today. As crazy as that sounds, some out there. But he gave his life up for his friends to kill the boss of the commission. A lot of people died in that. There was tremendous ramifications from killing the boss. And I can't take that away from John Gotti that he, and I'm not bragging about or gloating about that he killed Paul. I'm just saying I won't take that off his rap sheet because that's on the top of John Gotti's resume because that's what he wanted to do. John always wanted to be the boss, a boss. And as you said earlier, Tony, and anybody who knew him, it wasn't about the money. He enjoyed being the boss of the Gambino family and the way he got up there. He didn't have to kill Paul in Manhattan. John had reasons why he did everything. John had his reasons why he wanted to blast his way into that life. And that there's shows about him, there's books about him. Regardless if Sammy was there or wasn't there, you set up a pretty good scenario and motive on Gravano's part. I think it's food for thought for everybody today. But John did kill Paul Castellano, Tommy Bilotti, and he was proud of it.
Without going one way or another, and certainly I'm not disparaging anything you have to say about any of this, Mikey. You know that. I could take where you're coming from, but I want everybody to understand what you just said in the context of why did Sammy do what he did? Because he knew if he could give that piece, hand it over in a nice little box with a bow on it, he got the keys to the cell. That's what happened.
Yeah,
he
like I said,
I don't care whoever did it. I don't know who did it, but whoever did it, it wasn't John, and fucking Sammy was not there, and he wasn't across the street, and he had nothing to do with nothing. He had a good story. He sold it. God, you know, that's what happened. Anyway, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, guys.